Partners. I'm here with Dr. James Stanger today, our Chief Certification Architect and President of our organization, and we're also with Natalie Holbrook, our special guest for the day. And we are here to talk about our CIW webinar, Birth of a Blogger. James, you want to say good morning?
You bet. Good morning, everybody. How you doing, Natalie?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing very well. Doing very well. Natalie is calling in from Manhattan, of all places. She is our urbane one. And she is the purveyor of natthefatrat.com, and she's going to tell us all about how that works. Let's see. So, again, welcome, everybody. We're glad to have you here. Lisa, I think you have a few things to remind everybody about or tell everybody about.
Just to let our most recent attendees who just joined us and didn't hear my previous intro, you are in muted mode by default. That means we can't hear you talking or saying anything, and that also helps keep any of the background noise down to a minimum so that we can all hear James and Natalie clearly. We are recording this webinar, and we'll have it posted on our website within a few days. We will also be sending out a slide presentation in a PDF format to all of our attendees today, so you will get a copy of this later on today or sometime tomorrow. And I think that covers it. Oh, one more thing. If you have questions for us, there's a questions tool in your GoToMeeting panel. You can go ahead and post those there. If I can answer them myself, I will. If I don't know the answer, I'll just hold your question until James or Natalie can address that. And that's your tool for communicating with us. All right, James.
Hey, thank you so much, Lisa. I appreciate it. So everybody, feel free to ask any questions into the chat window, and we'll answer them as we go along, or we'll wait at the end to answer your questions. We want to make sure that we make this session as interactive as possible. Well, here's the agenda real quick. An introduction to Natalie. We'll be talking a bit about CIW just at the beginning for those of you who don't know what it is. And then we're going to talk about natthefatrat.com and how she got that, how she gave it that name. She'll talk about what it means to create an authentic persona, what she did in getting her blog going, how she does business as a blogger, writing techniques, and building a network. And then we'll field some questions. So there's kind of the agenda. Does that meet with your approval, Mrs. Holbrook?
Absolutely. Let's go.
All right, let's get her going here. So Natalie, tell us a bit about yourself. You're owner and proprietor of natthefatrat.com. You're the blogger's blog of note back in 2008. What kind of blogger are you? Tell us a bit more about natthefatrat.com.
Well, I kind of fit in with the old school kind of blogger, which is the kind of blogger that just talks about herself all the time. A lot of people will ask me, what do you blog about? And a lot of people these days will blog about the crafts that they do, or they're mommy bloggers, they blog about their children, and I am one of the old stalwarts. I blog about me. It's my favorite topic.
Okay, so there's no real one, so yeah, you wouldn't call yourself a mommy blogger, really. I kind of threw out the term identity blogger because you are writing about yourself, and that's what's kind of fun.
I think that might be, I've never heard that term before, but I think that would be like the most accurate, for sure.
Now, you live in New York City, and you started your blog, was it back in '05? Did I get that right, or did you start that a bit earlier?
It's right, and I started in 2005 on diaryland.com, which is, I don't even think it exists anymore.
Okay, okay. And I don't know how many users you have there or how you count them, but I know you get a lot of hits on this thing.
You mean readers and followers and subscribers, I guess you would say.
Yeah, and you're on Twitter as well. Yeah.
I'm on Twitter as well, and I have Facebook. I don't have a Facebook page just for my blog, but I kind of figure that I am good enough, so it's just my Facebook page. But I will have followers, readers who friend me there also.
Okay, and then you work a lot with advertisers, and we'll be going into that later on. But when did you start accepting advertising on your blog, anyway?
I started shortly after I was made blog of note. I finally had the traffic to support it, and people were emailing me and suggesting partnerships. And I had heard a lot about BlogHer, which is a network that you can join. And friends of mine had joined who had bigger readers than I had, and I had applied. You have to apply and then sit on a waiting list for a while, and they approve you. And so I had already applied. It's kind of a pipe dream. And then after I was made blog of note, and I suddenly was, somebody, they emailed me and said, all right, we'll have you.
All right. Well, tell us for a second about Blog of Note and also about that application process for Blog Her, and then we'll get to the burning question of how the heck you got this name, natthefatrat.com.
Yes.
So first, tell us a bit about Bloggers of Note, and then a little bit more about Blog Her, because I think a lot of people are interested in that kind of network kind of.
Absolutely. Well, the platform I use for my blog is blogspot.com. Blogger is the company, and it's owned by Google, I believe, is the connection there. And they have a blog. Blogger has a blog called Blog of Note, and just about every day or so they'll pick a blog from their big, huge, vast amount of blogs that are hosted on their server, and they'll spotlight it. And a lot of blogs actually have gotten their start this way. A Cup of Joe is a really big lifestyle blog, and then there's a Style Rookie who's a fashion blogger who made all this big news because she went to Fashion Week and sat with Anna Wintour and whatever. So I feel like I was in good company. So they spotlight me in October of 2008. And I went from having 300 followers in Blogger to having about 1,500 overnight. It was literally a big break. And, of course, I had been blogging for 3 years up until that point, and I had my steady little following that would slowly but surely increase, but it was kind of like this big, massive moment of...
Fantastic. So that's the kind of networking that really, breathed a lot of life, as far as followers anyway, into your blog.
Yeah, and that's probably one of the big benefits of having a publishing network like Blogger, instead of maybe buying your own website and coding it from scratch, is that you kind of are a part of a bigger, bigger network.
That's right. So for the benefit of those who are want to get started in their own blog, do you have a URL for that?
For Blogger?
Yeah.
I think it's just blogger.com.
Okay,
yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Okay, that's the one I've.
It's
that's the one I've
completely free to start a blog, and then you can sort of, personalize it a little bit. They have templates to choose from. It's a pretty easy way to get going. You can get started right, probably take an hour. An hour and you're set.
An hour and you're set. I like that. Now, so tell us a bit about this natthefatrat.com. I don't think everybody is in on the on where you got this name from.
Genus? Well, the story goes, legend has it, that I was incredibly chubby as a child, and a particularly insensitive uncle of mine came to visit when I was maybe 6 months or so and remarked to my mother, "That child is so fat." And I think, wasn't it rubber bands around my wrist? Is that what you asked?
I asked your mother, in the interest of true disclosure, folks, I am the evil, insensitive uncle. And I'm the one, and I said, what do you have rubber bands around your baby's wrists for? That's not very nice. And my sister, in her inimitable ways like James, those aren't rubber bands. Those are her arms. And I went, oh, well, Nat the Fat Rat. And your mother loves that. Let me tell you, she just, I was her favorite brother from then on. And, so I am the one who is to blame for natthefatrat.com.
And that was my nickname for a very long time. And, of course, I hated it because it's kind of derogatory a little bit. Fat, excuse me? But I was.
Just so everybody knows, Natalie, I think if a strong gust of wind were to blow, it would blow you right down, right into Central Park.
Yeah, I'm not large in stature, it's true. I'm about the size of a 5th grade boy. But
that's all right.
So it stuck around, and when I was thinking about having a blog and wasn't sure what to call it, I was trying to find something snappy, and I figured I might try and embrace the nickname and maybe learn to love it a little bit, and it was certainly catchy. So
Thank you. Catchy it
Uncle
is.
James.
But see, this is what's so interesting to me about your blog, Natalie, is that what you do is, people will talk about the talking cure and psychiatry and that sort of thing. Blogging to me is almost the writing cure. In other words, people, especially with your blog, you call yourself an old school blogger, but what you do with that blog at natthefatrat.com is you go in and you kind of work out whatever, not really issue, but whatever interests you for that day.
It's absolutely true.
I mean, for example, you wrote about giving birth to Henry, your child, which I think we heard babbling a bit in the background. That was just so everybody knows that was her baby, not me babbling there. So you've written quite a few wonderful things along those lines. That's what's so interesting Because you definitely set yourself up as some form of identity or some sort of voice, or as we'll see in a second, a persona, right?
Sure, yes.
And so we'll get into that in a second. Now, just so everybody knows who we are, by the way, I wanted to get into this here, folks. This webcast is brought to you by CIW. CIW teaches everything that a blogger needs to know, as it were. We're a skills-based education program. We're vendor neutral. We're globally accepted. And what we wanted to do with this is to bring Natalie in, who is an accomplished blogger and a recognized blogger, and for her to give you her perspective on blogging. So the reason why we're doing this, though, is that with CIW we are set to create more bloggers. We're set to give people all sorts of skills. We teach people the best vendor applications as judged by industry, whether it be Microsoft or Adobe or open source tools. We take a competency and job role-based approach to web-based education. As a result, we're globally accepted. We have over 65, 70,000 certified individuals and growing every day. CIW is a web education standard. We create it using web experts. A community of web professionals, instructors, and technologists all get together. We have a global presence from EMEA to Japan and worldwide. And it's designed by education experts in university, community college, high school, and learning centers. So, Natalie, when you hear the term CIW, which you probably have from me over the years, now you know a little bit more about what CIW is.
It all makes sense.
Okay, and CIW is used worldwide by learning centers such as Firebrand in the United Kingdom, YAD in Egypt, various Kente in Japan, LaSalle Learning in the United States. Universities worldwide also use us. Kaplan, the University of the West of Scotland, Home Learning College. Secondary schools with grades 9 through 12 worldwide, and many community colleges across the world. We have an advisory council that includes academia, such as people from the University of the West of Scotland and New Hebei University, but also people who are government employees from the state of Virginia. Also, people from industry, Google, Certiport, CompTIA, HP, are all involved in helping us make CIW what it should be. So we create this cross-section of industry and academia and government and non-for-profit organizations to all work together to make CIW what it should be. And as a result, Internet.com has named CIW a top developer cert. It's recommended CIW as one of the top 5 certifications that put developers right on the fast track. And we came in at number 3 right behind Microsoft and Oracle Sun. And basically they stated that we have the distinction for being the industry standard for webmasters. And when you combine the in-demand skill sets and proven salary, the CIW certification becomes valuable. And there's a link, and everybody will get a copy of this particular webcast so you can follow these links. We have all sorts of government endorsements in the UK, eSkills and City and Guilds, and in the United States, the Department of Defense 8570 initiative, CIW. And I see Henry agrees with that now.
Yes.
And the Scottish Qualifications Authority also has listed CIW for some time. So, Natalie, tell us a bit more about how you got started with Nat the Fat Rat. And everybody, you should be seeing here in just a moment a sample of one of her pages that's been up here. Why did you get?
It started because, well, I was working as an executive secretary at a law firm in Portland, and I was, of course, doing what you do at an office, which is read a lot of blogs. And so there were a few in particular that I was, this is back in 2003, so this was in the early days of blogging, and I was really particularly smitten with this writer. She went with the name of Mimi Smarty Pants, and she wrote on Diaryland, and it was the first time I'd ever actually read something and laughed, like literally, like big belly laughs at my desk and hoping no one would see me, and I thought it was just the craziest thing. And later that year we ended up moving to New York City and for my husband's job. And I remember reading these blogs and thinking, oh, I could do that. I could totally do that. And the difference is, I would watch the Olympics from time to time and think, oh, I could do that too. I could totally be a gymnast. You know how you kind of have that. But I knew that writing a blog was actually something that I could literally do that wouldn't, require anyway, so I talked to my mom about these different blogs here and there, and then I would call her from New York City, and I would say, Mom, you won't believe what happened, and I'd be telling her all of these things that I had seen, or places I had been to, and she still had Blake and Alex at home, my younger siblings. I think Blake was in elementary school, and so obviously she had no time for my ridiculously long-winded stories, and she would be like, oh, Natalie, you should start a blog, and I gotta go. And I could tell it was like, having a blog was the only way that I would get my story out uninterrupted, which for me is very important because no one ever has enough of an attention span for me. I have a voracious ability to just go and talk. And so I did. I started a blog so that my mother, when she had time for me, could find out what I was up to. So we thank my mother and you for my blog.
Well, there you go. Now, what are some of the entries that stand out in your mind that you've created over time? What are some of the common themes that seem to appear on natthefatrat.com?
Well, I finally went through a couple months ago and pulled out some of my favorite posts and linked to them from my front page, which I don't know why it didn't occur to me to do that sooner. The very first post I ever wrote was about the Target in Brooklyn. And shopping, and
shopping. Who knew, Natalie? Who knew?
I know.
Yeah.
And I wrote a lot in the early days about my dog, Peter Pan. We had just bought a little puppy because I was ready to have babies, and my husband was not. He was ready to go to law school, and so we got a dog instead. And so I wrote a lot about Peter and our little misadventures in the city, and then I wrote about Brandon going to law school. Brandon is the Holds, and then over time, kind of an evolving theme that I write about a lot is I had kind of a 2-year stint with infertility. It was just kind of unexplained infertility, and I wrote a lot about my struggles to get pregnant and how I felt, and my desires to be a mother, and frustrations with work and things. Originally, I didn't really have a theme or an overriding persona. I just kind of wrote whatever was there in my head, and it was just all over the place. And then,
but this is, oh, go ahead, Matt. Go ahead.
Well, I kind of fell out of love with blogging probably in 2007. I just stopped doing it. I just moved to Idaho, and I was working full time, and it was a really spiritually challenging job. I would describe it as it was kind of a rough time to be me. And so I fell out of love with blogging and didn't do it. And later I discovered some blogs. A friend of mine in Idaho, she was like, oh, you'd love my girlfriend. Her name was Courtney, and you should read her blog. And, oh, you'd love my friend Karina. You should read her blog. And I did, and I was realizing there were people who wrote about the little tiny things in life and kind of made a big deal out of them. And I thought, oh, that's something that I should be doing right now because I have nothing exciting going on in my life, and I need a direction. I need something to put myself into. And so I started to kind of rewrite again with a different focus. And since then, my focus has been to write about, the small things that are worth remembering, not so much the big, huge events, but just the little things like, a bird's nest.
You bet. You bet. But in doing this, you've developed quite an audience, though. Who is your particular demographic, or maybe if you don't have one, who are some of the people who have been following you, and what are their stated reasons why? Obviously you have friends who follow you. You may have family, but you have many others as well.
Well, it's funny because I didn't start having a lot of friends reading me. I started with mostly strangers and my mom. But even my mom wasn't a very regular reader in the beginning. She was kind of a Fairweather fan. She'd read once every couple months, and anyway. But yeah, at first, especially after Blog of Note, I had mostly strangers, a lot of just mixed, men and women, older, younger. It was kind of a bizarre mix of people, and it was a strange time in my blog, actually, because I would write things and not knowing how it would hit. I had no idea what kind of a response I would get.
That's the interesting thing about your particular approach, is that it's so eclectic, right? You interest so many different types of people for so many reasons. Some people, I think, they are interested in that mom side of things. Some people seem to be interested almost on your spiritual observations. Other people see it almost, what they're seeing is a perspective into a particular female psyche that I think is very interesting.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I didn't initially set into it trying to cultivate any certain audience, to be honest. I kind of just wanted to be true to myself and have a product that where if I went back and read my archives, I would be proud of what I wrote. And also, I really wanted to have a record of my life that I was in control of, because I've kept journals here and there over the years, and
Sure.
really pretty embarrassing because I tend to write about what I've eaten and how much I need to work out. And that's basically the extent of my journal entries. You know, today I felt, this way about myself. And the few times I've journaled, I just thought, oh, this isn't even worth my time. But in a blog, I feel more responsible to myself to be proud of it, since people are going to be reading it. But I don't really seek a certain person, if that makes sense. I don't seek an audience.
Okay, so at least consciously, then, you're not particularly going after, you're not necessarily responding to readers as much as just writing for yourself.
I try not to, because I think that my readers really respond better when I'm more honest to myself. The few times I've tried to really give them what they want or acknowledge that they've requested things, it kind of has a hit and miss effect. And so I think that people like me for who I am. It's a very Sesame Street thing to say. But I think that the more true to myself I am, the better my writing comes across, and the better they seem to be.
And this is what I wanted to get into, is this whole idea of creating an authentic persona. And I put this in quotation marks for a reason, because if you're authentic, right, that means that you are just, yourself, and you are wonderful, and you're not trying to be anything. And yet, the act of writing is always some form of creation and artifice, is it not? I mean, there's got to be some sort of fine line between, who you are, but also presenting things a certain way. Tell us more about, how you've developed your persona over the years.
Well, certain things just I come by naturally. I talk a lot about the same things over and over again. I talk a lot about babies and how much I love babies, and I talk about You've Got Mail, because I watched that movie way too many times, and I talk a lot about, certain kinds of food, like bagels make a constant appearance in my writing, it seems. And sometimes when I'm writing and I want to use like a descriptive example and a bagel comes up, I think to myself, so I really want to write about this because I'm becoming kind of a stereotype of myself. And usually I'll do it anyway, but I am aware of how I come across, and I'm aware of, have I brought this up before? Have I already said this? I try and always, I write it all out first, exactly how I would say it if I were talking to my mother or my husband, and then afterwards I go back in and I just clean it up a little bit so that it's more Nat the Fat Ratty. And it's funny because I'll get emails from people from time to time, and they'll say things like, oh, I've started wearing stripes a lot lately, which is a very Nat the Fat Rat thing to do, or I, was eating a bagel and I thought of you, or I'll get little tweets here and there about, watching it, You've Got Mail, things like that. Or
Sure.
One thing that was really funny was about a year and a half ago, I started getting commenters who would comment, Brandon would say, in the Nat the Fat Rat style. They would use phrases that I use a lot, like, I don't know where I picked up this thing of saying something is this unto me or that unto me, kind of biblical. Like,
right, yeah.
Yeah, I picked that up somewhere, and it became this really bad habit, and suddenly my commenters were giving it back to me in the comment section, and Brandon was like, this is awesome, these people really get you. And interestingly enough, it's helped my husband get me a little bit better, too.
That's great. That's cool. That's very cool. That's very cool. So there are readers who said things about you. Some of them are, I'm sure you feel are accurate and really cool. So tell us some about that. And also, what are some of the unfair and totally unfair things that people have said to you?
Well, let's start with the good news. I get really, really lovely emails from readers, especially readers who struggled with infertility. I will get emails from them from time to time saying, thank you so much for writing about this. And it's true, because I wrote once about getting my period and having like really, really bad cramps, and I was really graphic about it. And when I posted it, I was like, a lady would not write about garbage like this. What is wrong with me? Where is my filter, and why don't I have one? And but posts like those seem to really resonate with people, and I have one reader in particular who I've been following her comments, that she'll comment on my blog for years, probably 3 years. And she was going through infertility along with me. I got pregnant, and she was still struggling. And I just got a comment just last week that she was expecting twins. And these people, I feel like they're invested in me, and that means so much to me that they trust me with their own struggles, and in that way I think this blogging thing is really, really amazing.
Well, it's interesting, and again, you're able, as we'll get into it in a minute, you're able to actually, monetize, this particular, persona or particular person. What are some of the unfair things that folks have said?
Golly. Like well, I have got me some people who like to read because, okay, well, I'm in on the joke. I want that out there. I'm in on the joke. I think I'm a little ridiculous, too. And I have readers who don't think that I know that. They will try to point out to me, are you kidding me? You think your life, I wrote once about how I was curling my eyelashes and I accidentally ripped the entirety of my eyelashes out of my left eye, like just gone. And how for about a day I was convinced I was never going to leave the house ever again. And I wrote about it in grand, L.M. Montgomery style, really having a moment of it. And I got emails from people saying, don't you know people have cancer? And don't you know people are dying? And who do you think you are? They're eyelashes. And I know, but, I mean, you're right. But so it's kind of a weird thing. I generally think most of my, and maybe this is, I don't know, I generally think that most of my detractors and my anonymous commenters are right. I mean, they're right. Not wrong. And so I leave the comments up because it's like, well, yeah, I'm ridiculous. I know. And I'll only take comments down if I feel like they're really pointless or hurtful to other people.
Right. But you've had quite a few people, in the blogosphere and made-up bloggers, right? People who go around and comment on blogging. You've achieved a bit of note in this area because
I have. It's weird.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to me. Now, as part of this, some of the recurring characters that you have in there, and I shouldn't call them characters because these are real people, but once again, when you're writing, there's always that fine line. There's the Holmes, that's your husband, and Henry is your baby, right? And then there's the dogs, Peter Pan and
Barnaby McDuff.
Barnaby, that's right. And then other friends and things like this.
Yes.
So I wanted to get out, some of the things that you tend to write about. When you are actually writing, and this is coming down a little bit to the skills here for a second, when you're actually, what are some of the skills that you have had to develop as a blogger? I think you brought writing to it naturally. Part of your degree that you got, involved a lot of writing. You did communication.
I have a degree in broadcast journalism, and I definitely used what I learned in my writing classes. I try to anyway. I edit always. But aside from the writing process, I use Blogger, which pretty much does all of the hard stuff for me, the formatting and things like that. But I do tinker with HTML quite a bit. I make my own banners. I work on my own, what's the word I'm looking for? I design my website a little bit. I change the column widths and kind of get in and tinker around with buttons and things like that. I edit my own photos. I change the aspect ratios of things.
Yeah, I've seen you do that a lot. You certainly do things, certainly with images because you do a lot of candid photos and things like that of you and your friends.
Yeah.
Now, what about in terms of things like analytics and checking out, the hits on your site and demographics and things like that? What kind of tools do you use there?
Well, I've used Stat Counter, and I have a Stat Counter widget installed. Lately, I've found that the internal Stat Counter for Blogger works pretty well. In fact, it seems like the Blogger widget will count a certain kind of hit that the Stat Counter doesn't recognize. The numbers are different, which is strange. I can't quite figure out. But I like to see where my readers are coming from. It's kind of a dangerous thing. Sometimes I'll go in and I'll say, oh, I'm getting some traffic from this website, and I'll go, and sometimes they're saying wonderful things about me, and I'm like, oh, this is so great. And other times I'll find blogs like, can you believe this girl? What is she talking about? And then I'll be kind of depressed for about an hour until my husband says, come on, get over yourself, and then I do. But yeah, I love to check my stats. I love to see who people are, and when people link to me, I love to go and read their blogs. And Brandon is the biggest one. He loves to check out the people who read me, the comments that they leave on my blog. He'll go and he'll follow their blogs, and he'll say, oh, this person's really tall, or oh my gosh, this person's really athletic. You should read their blog. Oh, this is funny. So we're aware of who reads us, which I think as I have gotten bigger and bigger has been kind of a mixed blessing, but I think I'll keep doing it.
Is this a, how many, types of comments do you get, say, in a day? Or is it, does it, you get a few one day and then hundreds the next, or how many?
I will generally get 20 comments on a decent post, and a really good one I'll get 30 or 40. And I've noticed there's some kind of mathematical equation you can do to figure out the number of commenters you'll get. It's like maybe, 2% of your readers will actually comment. It's kind of a weird ratio. And
no, that sounds about right. No, it sounds about right.
My commenters are always the same people, and I kind of feel like they're like my friends, because I've been talking to them for so long. They talk back, and so I have one commenter in particular who promised me a long time ago. She entered a giveaway, and she wrote, "I've never commented on a blog before, and now that I have, I'm just going to comment on all of your posts." And I thought she was kind of being cute and tongue-in-cheek, and then she's turned around and commented on every post, and I can tell when she hasn't read in a while. And then all of a sudden one day I'll wake up with 20 emails in my inbox from her because she's commented on every single post that she's missed. And it's really lovely. I think it's kind of great. They're people, and we talk about them, oh, so-and-so said this, and we haven't seen her in a while. So.
As you, how often do you think you have to post a blog entry in order to keep your readers, interested and that they know natthefatrat.com is still alive?
I try and make sure that I never go more than 2 or 3 days without writing, weekends accepting, and long weekends. Sometimes I'll take the whole weekend off, but I generally do 4 or 5 posts a week, which is a lot, and that's why sometimes my writing quality lags, and I'll get the occasional, "Remember you used to write? I miss that." I get comments like that a lot, and I think, yeah, I know, you're right. But it's a lot of writing with a kid, but I try my best.
When it comes to designing your pages, do you try to follow any particular design principles, or do you pretty much just put up a blog or put up a page and that's it?
I'm very aware of trying to look like I have some style. I want people to think that I am stylish, because then it gives me kind of I don't know, it feels good. I like to think that I'm stylish.
Right,
so
right.
I put a lot of work into it. But you can't please everybody, and that's for sure. But I also am aware of what my peers are doing and what their blogs look like and what tools they're using, and I kind of keep an eye on the blogs that I feel are similar to mine. And
now, that's a slide later on, but I'm going to ask it right now. What are some of the, the people that you consider peers? What are some of the blogs that you tend to follow? Because I think that's a really good tip for everybody listening, that, you pick a particular niche and then see what they're doing. And I don't think you slavishly imitate it, but you definitely have to be aware of the dialogue. So what are some of the sites?
Well, for instance, Salon.com wrote an article about the Mormon hipster housewife mommy blogs. And
sounds like you, Natalie. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I guess that's me. She targeted my blog and then a couple of others like cjanerun.com and sayyestohoboken.com, and there's one called underagedandengaged.com and the Rockstar Diaries. I can't remember her URL off the top of my head, but so I figured since I was kind of put in that category, I would consider them peers. I hadn't before then, but okay, I'll do that. I like to I kind of fit in a weird niche. I kind of feel like I'm a little bit of a lifestyle blogger, but I'm not a lifestyle blogger. I don't tell people what to buy or anything.
Right, right.
I'm a little bit of a mommy blogger, but I'm not, because I don't blog about, well, I do blog more at babbel.com about mommy blog type stuff. But so I'll follow some mommy blogs. I kind of try and keep myself relevant there, but at the same time I want to make sure that I'm not becoming a caricature of our type. I want to make sure that if they're doing this already and doing it better than me, that I find something different, just so that it doesn't seem like noise, if that makes sense.
That's right. That's right. Now, you picked up quite a few sponsors. How did you? I use the word sponsors. I guess I should just use the word advertisers.
Well,
so sorry.
Sponsor is the word that bloggers use, and I'm not sure what really the difference is. I guess a sponsor sometimes will send us things that we can try and write about, I guess, is the difference. I don't know. But yeah, I was with BlogHer. I recently left them and joined a different advertising network. So I've got that, and that's the kind of situation where they will go out for you and pitch your site to sponsors, and advertisers and handle that, and you just put in their code. And so they kind of take a cut. They're like an advertising agent, basically. And they take a cut of your revenue. So I've got that. And then you also have boutique advertisers, which are far more difficult to upkeep for the bloggers part. You have to find them and maintain them and code your own ads. Usually they'll send you stuff, you have to put it in. And when they're expiring, you need to contact them and say, you know, we're expiring, would you like to renew? And you have to be aware of what you're worth, which you don't have to do for a network. And that can be tricky too. You have to know what your stats are and what you can ask, and you have to develop your own kind of, like, what am I going to give you in exchange for this ad? I mean, there's monetary payment, of course, and there's giveaways, and then there are, you know, you can do for trade sometimes, like with Freshly Picked. She's one of my favorite shop owners. She's just the most talented woman ever. Her name is Susan Peterson, and she is paying me entirely in moccasins for that ad, and I would have it no other way because they're the greatest. So it all depends on, you know, who it is and how you work it out. But the way I found them was I actually went to all of my favorite independent shop owners that I've, you know, shopped at before, and I just emailed them and said, hi, I'm taking sponsors, and are you interested? And it was a lot of work, but I got a pretty good return.
Well, indeed, because you have, it seems to me, I don't know if it's a dozen sponsors on there, but you certainly had more than that many over the years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know?
And it's frustrating when sometimes, you know, I'll get a sponsor who will stay with me for just a while and say, oh, it's not really worth it to me. I didn't get enough traffic, or no one clicked on it. And so it's kind of you're putting yourself out there, and more often than not, they're saying, yeah, you know, that's okay, we'll pass. But sometimes you find a good match. It's tricky because you have to find a good match for your readers. It's not just about who I think I would like, it's who my readers would like. And so you have to kind of know who you're dealing with on both ends, and it takes some finesse.
Okay, tell us a bit about some of your more, you know, successful relationships there. You don't have to get into, obviously, you know, revenue type things, but, you know, what were their particular thresholds for what they considered success and that sort of thing? And who's your top, one of your, you know, a couple of your top sponsors right now?
Well, I would say, based on reader feedback, some of my top sponsors are Freshly Picked and The Little Tiny, and also a vintage poster, because I get the most questions. And it seems to me that what really works is a combination of for trade and cash in exchange for advertising, because you know, if it's a product I love, my kid's going to be wearing it, or it's going to be showing up in my photos, and my readers are always asking me, oh, where did you get that skirt, or where did you get those cute moccasins, or where did you get that neat print? And I'm able to say, oh, from so-and-so, and they're also a sponsor, here's how you get to it. And as long as you're up and up about how you obtained it and say, you know, it's courtesy of, you know, because
right, well, there's that authenticity again, and that fine line between.
Right. Yeah, I don't want anyone to be like, oh, she's so full of herself, or oh, she, you know, turns out that's, she didn't buy that, she got that for free. Like, I want them all to know, yeah, I got it for free. I'm okay with them doing it.
What are some other terms that, when I say terms for the relationship, so sometimes it's for click-throughs, sometimes it's just for space on the page sort of thing?
Sometimes it's just, well, you know, a lot of, you can't measure exposure and positive correlation with a product. And I think that a lot of the time that's what these companies are getting is, you know, maybe you didn't click on the ad and actually buy something, but the next time you saw it, you thought, oh, so-and-so had that on our blog. I remember that. And I think that's mostly what they're going for, mostly what they're achieving. But I think that occasionally, you know, if some companies that I have had as advertisers will have their own code that will track the hits they get from me directly, and some just go based off of whether or not they felt like it was a good match. Like, did their business go up, and did people contact them more frequently? So it kind of is it's tricky on both ends, I guess.
Pretty good. Very good. Well, thanks, Natalie. It's good stuff about advertising. When it comes to writing, we already talked a bit about, you know, how consciously you go after reader interest. But you once mentioned to me that sometimes off-the-cuff remarks that you make actually get, you know, surprise you and get a bigger response than you expected.
Yeah,
Tell
it's
us
true.
a bit more about that.
You know, I'll write a post about one thing, I think, and then I'll get comments about something else entirely, and it's like everybody read it differently, and oh, okay, I guess this is what was interesting about my post. One time I threw in just randomly at the end of a post asking readers if they've ever said rabbit, rabbit on the first day of the month, because that's something that I've always done. And I got such a big response from that, like, oh my gosh, you do that too, and I thought that was really funny. And sometimes I'll, one thing that, I mean, possibly it's a bad thing, but, you know, I'll toss in little "you've got mail" quotes, like almost without realizing it. It's completely like subconsciously. And then I'll have people, you know, comment back, oh my gosh, I love that movie. Or one time I mentioned a line from You've Got Mail, and I didn't even realize I had done it until afterwards. One of my commenters commented an entire scene, the text, the full dialogue of an entire scene. And that was my favorite comment, I think, of all time, because it was like, they get me. They're on my wavelength. It's kind of sad how incredibly, but, you know, it's true. You can write a post about something that, you know, that you feel very deeply about and just casually mention, like, oh, and then I was at McDonald's, and I think their straws are too fat. One time I said that I think McDonald's straws are too fat, and I got a lot of people saying, yes, you're right, those straws are too fat. So there you go.
Well, now, are there any particular rules that you have in mind as you write? You know, I think you kind of, each blogger has to make up, you know, her own, his own. Are there any rules that you keep in mind? Are there times when you break them and, you know, successfully, or do you, you know, pay every time you break your own rules?
Yeah, well, so I've gotten a lot more lax on them lately, but my rules have used to be, and still are to some extent, I like to try and write a standalone piece that doesn't exist within a blog so much. It's just, it could be anywhere. It could be in my journal. It could be in a magazine. It could be in a book. It could be on a blog. And so I like to write, you know, without, I try to follow, you know, journalism rules, avoiding the you, the reader you, and I also acting rules, breaking the fourth wall, whatever on earth that means. I try and have it be, you know, like a piece of writing that I'm proud of. And lately, as I've lived in New York City again, and I'm doing fun things again. I wasn't for a long time, but now I like to write about things I've done and the places I've been and pictures I've taken. And so you kind of have to drop the whole, you know, writer aspect of it for those posts. And for a long time, I felt guilty about posting my posts. I felt like it was cheating. And I get mixed responses. I'll get a lot of people who say, oh, I love these picture-heavy posts. I love seeing what you did. Keep doing it. And then I'll get the, I remember you used to write comments, and I feel like, so I kind of try and straddle, because I like writing the posts that are more like stream of consciousness, here's what we're doing. In fact, when I was writing, before I was made blog of note, I used to do this thing once a week called an epic post of nothingness, where I would just break with my whole, you know, setup, and I would just blog about the stupidest stuff. And those were always the most popular posts and got the best comments. And looking back on it, they're more fun for me to read because it was like an in-the-moment how I was feeling about Old Navy or whatever. And somehow, so I try and do a mix. But I will, if I have not written a proper post, like for me right now, it's been a while since I've written a proper post, I will feel like I've got like this nagging thing I need to resolve. And then I will get emails occasionally from people being like, come on, that's enough.
That's enough, yeah.
You've had a nice break. Let's get back to it. So,
when it comes to doing your particular blog, do you do any particular active search engine optimization to attract more people, or do you let the blog kind of, you know, speak for itself?
I don't do any SEO. I took a little class, not class. I watched a thing online about it once, and I went to a blogging conference where they talked about SEO, and I thought about it, but it doesn't feel authentic to me. And also, I'm just not really, I'm not on top of it enough to really give it all of my effort. And so, no, I just kind of let it be what it is. I'm aware of it, though.
Okay, and you mentioned conferences, so you've gone to quite a few conferences, I know.
Yeah, I've gone to, well, I've only actually gone to one. I've been to one conference, and I've been to a few blogging events.
That's what I was thinking. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Events, like press release kind of things. I've been to a lot of those for Babbel. I'll do that. I feel like having Babbel has been a nice way for me to draw the line between what I'll do for my own personal Nat the Fat Rat and then what I'll do for Babbel. So it's really great. But that's one thing I do recommend is blogging conferences. I mean, even if at first I thought it rubbed me the wrong way, this whole like seeking readers and whatever. But actually, the more I've been doing this, the more I realize that you're part of a community, and it's a really neat way to become, friends with other bloggers, and it kind of enriches the whole experience. So it's no longer just you and a computer and your ego. Suddenly it's a community, and it's people that you care about and who care about you, and interacting with them, and it can kind of feel more important and bigger and less about yourself if you do go to conferences and spread the word about yourself and meet people, which is kind of not what you expect, but that's how I've felt about it anyway. So I'm looking forward to more.
When you're doing analytics, do you mostly have a U.S. audience? Do you have people worldwide, or what kind of demographics are there?
I'm primarily U.S. and Canada, but I've got a lot of Europe, France, and Great Britain, UK, whatever you call that, England. It's terrible.
Yeah, UK. Come on, you're the Urbane Manhattanite, yes. United Kingdom.
I always get really confused when I think about that part of the world. But yeah, Ireland and Britain and a couple in Australia. Australia is a big blogging country, and New Zealand too, and I've got lots of readers from there. South America, almost none, sadly. I need some South American readers.
None.
Practically none.
So we've already talked a bit about the whole criticism and things, and you, like I said, you talk about very personal things there. What do you worry about privacy and that sort of thing in terms of some of the things you talk about and what people's responses might be?
I know that I should, and I know that I should feel embarrassed about a lot of the things I've written about. But no, I don't worry about privacy because I don't know, it seems like if something's going to happen, when Henry gets old enough, I'm not going to write about him anymore. I'm going to respect his privacy.
Yeah, you have to do that.
Absolutely. And I respect my husband's privacy, and so if he says, don't write about this in conversation, and then I write about it and he still doesn't like it, I'll erase it. But generally I write about it anyway, and he's usually okay with it because I kind of have figured out intrinsically how to avoid the stuff that's too private for him. And,
when it comes to blogging, you'll get anonymous people who are just kind of carping, and then you have trolls. Trolls are people who really will go after, to say all these silly things. Do you just ignore them? That's the old term. Do not feed the troll. Right?
I've been lucky. I don't think I have trolls. I think the anonymous commenters I've gotten, I think they really feel strongly about what they say, and I don't think that they're just out there for sport. So I'm hoping that if I respect my anonymous commenters, that they'll in turn respect me. But I don't know. Maybe that won't work. But I try to acknowledge the truth in every comment I get, and I try to acknowledge the value in what they have to say, and acknowledge that they're probably right. There's a very large chance that they're totally right, and so I'll leave it up. But I do worry about, it's funny in my day-to-day life, I still feel like blogging is in its infancy and being taken seriously, and I still feel a little bit of embarrassment when people introduce me as, oh, this is my friend Natalie, she's a blogger. I go, oh yeah, I'm a blogger. And it's always weird to me when I have conversations with people and they go, oh yeah, I read about that on your blog, and I'll be like, oh yeah, that's right, I can't tell them the story because I already told them the story. And occasionally my in-laws, who are some of my biggest fans, will read a blog of mine, and maybe Brandon hasn't read it yet, and then one time my father-in-law texted Brandon, so how was that burrito? And Brandon was like, this has got to stop.
Because everybody knows their business. Yeah.
So sometimes that does get a little bit shouldn't I feel embarrassed about it? And when I've talked about it with Brandon, and when I've prayed about it, because I pray about my blog a lot, I feel like it's the right thing for me to be doing, even though it is a little bit, I acknowledge it's ridiculous. I do talk about really silly things. Very personal things.
Now you talked about the different conferences that you go to, and I think one thing I'd like to cover real quick is you mentioned conferences, but then you also mentioned something about, and I didn't quite write it down good enough, something about conferences versus events that you go to. What's the difference? Are events more just, trade show type things, and conferences are more people talking about specifics on their blogs?
It seems to be a whole bunch of different kinds of ways. There are blog conferences, like Blog Her is the big one. It's once a year. This year it's in San Diego. There's the Alt Summit that I'm really interested in going to this year. And
what's it called?
Alt Summit, A-L-T, and it's in Salt Lake City.
Okay.
Conferences like that are made for bloggers to attend. They pay their own way, or they get a sponsor to send them. and they talk about blogging stuff, and they exchange business cards, and they get inspired about how to manage their blogs and how to different just blogging things. And then there are events, and the events are put on by PR people for big companies, and they invite bloggers to write about them. And so you'll go, and they'll give you freebies, and sometimes they'll give you hors d'oeuvres and tell you about stuff, and then you go home and you're at your leisure to write about it. And so I've been doing those quite a bit for Babbel, and I enjoy them, although it's tricky because it inflates your ego falsely. You go and they fawn all over you, but in the end they just want you to write about their new toy or whatever. So but those are fun because I've met other bloggers who are doing what I do for Babbel for their own blogs, and so it's good to know your peers. It's really, really important to know who you're writing with, and I think that's my one advice for anybody who starts a blog, is to figure out what kind of blog you want to write, and then figure out who writes like you, and then become their friend, and not just for traffic or whatever, but because it kind of enriches the entire experience and makes it more meaningful and more fun, and you do have someone to read you who has an interest in what you're talking about that way. You're not just talking about
and I think the main thing about blogging is it's kind of I shouldn't say new age, but it's a new way of communicating. It's a new way to form a community, really. And that's really what people warm up to and respond to in any blogger's writing, whether it be a political blogger, right, or a more lifestyle blogger or what have you. That's really why people keep.
Because the old-fashioned idea of a blogger was someone sitting around in their pajamas, talking to nobody, leading a very lonely existence, and writing about themselves, and maybe that's how it started, but that's not what it's evolved into. Now it's all about the community and the people that you meet, and I think that's really cool.
I agree. Now, about Twitter, you definitely spent a lot of time on Twitter as well, and you mentioned Facebook earlier. They're not mutually exclusive then. Did you find a moment, though, where you realized that you're spending a whole lot more time on Twitter than on the traditional blog? I mean, because they're two very different forms of writing.
It's funny. Actually, I started Twitter because everyone said I should, and I was like, oh, I hate this. So I kind of went off of Twitter for a while and then got back on it. It's funny because sometimes I'll write a tweet and I'll think that would be a great blog post, and I wonder, but did I already do it? Is it like overkill if I write about it too? And I haven't figured that out yet. I think that sometimes tweeting can be an avenue for stuff that doesn't belong on my blog, but that I feel like I want to say anyway. And sometimes it can be kind of like a rough draft of a blog, the little spark of an idea. And sometimes the fun thing about Twitter, and the thing that I recommend for anyone who's thinking about starting Twitter, is to have a friend on Twitter with you going into it so you have someone to talk to. Because Twitter isn't fun if you're not talking to people. The whole point is to have people talk back to you, and it takes a long time before you have your own set of people who will talk back to you. Because, people have to get over that initial, I don't know this person, they're going to think I'm stalking them if I write back. And I even feel that way when I tweet with some of the people that I respect but don't know in person. And so it helps to have a friend, have a tweety buddy.
Yep. Very good, very good. So blogging, is it a generational thing? In other words, is it possible that, bloggers are going to be of a certain time and then everybody's going to move to tweeting? I don't think so. I think they're just going to go hand in hand and there'll be an interaction between the two.
I think you're right. I don't think that Twitter is going to replace blogging by any means. Do you mean generational in terms of like generations of the internet or generations of people?
I mean more, not generations of people so much because they're all ages, but it's almost like generations of the internet. Like, I was exposed to the internet at this particular moment in the history of the web or the internet.
That's what I do.
Blogging was big.
I don't know, that's interesting. I feel like a little bit Facebook is already starting to become like an older internet medium. Like it's no longer the thing to do. I think Twitter is the new thing, but I think that Twitter is going to be, well, who knows? Maybe it'll stick around, but it does seem like it'll be replaced with something else. Like right now, Instagram is something that's a lot of fun for people who have a smartphone with a good camera. It's like Twitter but with pictures, and you can put, you can comment on them.
Yeah, because Twitter's still very tied to that kind of, old SMS protocol troubleshooting thing, whereas Instagram, bringing images in, I think is a big deal.
Yeah. So I can see how Twitter might someday be kind of dead in the water or dying in the water. I don't know about blogging. I think that it's an interesting medium because it allows so much creative freedom that you don't have in Twitter. And I think that's why Twitter and Instagram and Facebook are fun, is because of the limits. And the reason why blogging is fun is because there are no limits. So possibly I don't know. It's an interesting question. I would say
just an idea there.
Yeah.
Now, do you do much image editing with software with Photoshop, or do you just kind of grab the picture and throw it up?
I don't use Photoshop because I cannot figure out Photoshop. I tried once and I was like, oh, made my eyes cross. I will sometimes edit photos in my iPhoto if I've taken them on my big girl camera. And then generally, I mean, I'm a lazy blogger and I use my iPhone for everything. So I take pictures on my iPhone and I use various photo editing apps. Like my favorite right now is Lomob, L-O-M-O-B, but I've also used Camera Plus and I've used Pipstamatic, which isn't an editing software, but it's a photo app. Instagram is good for editing too. You know, I'll take a picture and put it through a filter, and I wonder how much longer I can get away with doing Instagram because I feel like it's been a little bit overdone lately. But you know,
now,
like but I do. I always edit my photos. If nothing else, I always edit them for size or crop them, or you know, fuss with the HTML to get them just right on my site.
And when you are messing around with the HTML, are you doing that in a Notepad text editor, or are you using a particular actual HTML?
I do it right through the Blogger window when you're posting. Those are my dogs, by the way. The Blogger window when you're posting, you can do 2 different tabs, and one of them is an HTML tab. And if you feel daring, you can go right in and edit the HTML through Blogger. And so I'll do that with my photos every time. Whether I add them through, sometimes I usually upload my photos to PhotoBucket because I have enough of bandwidth that I need to have a good, reliable backup post for my photos. But I'll always change the sizes when I get into Blogger through HTML.
Okay. Now, we've already talked about who your favorite bloggers are, but thanks for giving a list of some of these tools that you use. I think a lot of people will find that very, very useful. So as far as putting it all together, you've got the writing, you've got something to write about, which is your particular lifestyle. You have a unique perspective. We talked a little bit about the design that you put together. I got to tie this back to CIW with our Web Foundations Associate, I should say WFA there, certification, and our Web Design Specialist certifications. You can learn all of the skills that Natalie's talking about here in terms of how to post blogs, how to use Twitter. Our e-commerce specialist does a nice job explaining how you would go about monetizing a blog. So those are ways that CIW would help out. Now, we are getting awfully close to the top of the hour here. What questions, folks, do you have for Natalie? Lisa, I saw one question, people asking for a PDF and of the
yeah, I went ahead and answered that one. We will be sending out a PDF of the slide presentation. I'll do that either later today or probably sometime tomorrow. Meanwhile, there were a couple of questions that I specifically assigned over to Natalie. Hopefully she can also get to her questions panel and can see those. Your cousin, Mikey B, did finally register into the system, get himself logged in. He wants to know how many haters or hecklers leave rude and inappropriate comments, and what do you do with them?
I get probably, it depends on the post. Usually it's only reserved for posts where they know that I've put myself out there in a vulnerable way. Like for the post about the dogs, I got quite a bit of mean anonymous commenters, but I felt like most of them had a good point, so I, left them on. They weren't being terribly mean. Usually they're just kind of harsh in their opinions, and that's fine. People think that they have a right to. And they do, because I invite them to have a right into my life. And so people will, sometimes be harsh with me and give me what they think is tough love. And personally, I think it's inappropriate and mean, but also I also think, I'm asking for it. So who am I to be a baby about it, I guess?
So you have to develop a thick skin.
You do. You have to acknowledge that you get what you put out. And if you say, what do you think, you're going to have to be a big girl about what they think. But like, for instance, I got a really funny comment on, I'm doing this stylathon wardrobe thing, and I got a comment, someone telling me that my outfit was ugly and that I was I wasn't a martyr. And of course I have all kinds of time to think about my clothes because I don't do anything with my life, and I thought it was funny. So I'll get them. I don't know how many there are. Sometimes I wonder if it's the same person. I have no idea how many there are. I try not to think about it.
You never know.
Yeah.
But, what other questions, Lisa?
Another question from another attendee asked fairly early on if you're blogging about a certain topic and do you tend to attract an audience that cannot really engage with your content. Do you refer them to other blogs?
You know, I've gotten sometimes people asking questions about X, Y, or Z, and I've referred them on to a website about where I bought something. But that hasn't actually ever really happened. Usually, I find that my content is pretty easy to engage with, and I'm very open to comments and emails, and so yeah, that hasn't happened. I don't think I have readers who are, I don't know, kind of a tricky question, and my kid is talking in my ear, so I can't really.
That's all right. So it is a tricky question, but
yeah.
I think it. But Natalie, I think when it comes to referring to other blogs, I'm not sure bloggers will talk about other. They'll talk about other blogs almost in a casual way, but not so much give references.
It's funny because there's kind of like an unspoken rule where it's like you can mention other bloggers, but I don't know. I've never had anyone say you should read Not the Fat Rat if that's what you're looking for. I don't know. That's a good question. I have, though, told people about, you know, other blogs. If they've emailed me, if they leave a comment and they don't link their email address, I generally don't get back because it takes so much effort to find their email address. So that's my soapbox today is please link your email with your comment so I can write you back. And then I'll be happy to recommend whatever I need to if you're looking for something. Oh, bug.
Well, I think Henry's done, and we're certainly just past the top of the hour. So, Natalie, I want to thank you very much for the time that you spent with us talking about your blog about the techniques that it takes. I really appreciate your insights into the particular persona that you put up there. So, with thanks to you, Natalie, and with thanks to Natalie, Lisa, I'll hand the webcast back to you.
Okay. Well, we appreciate everyone's attendance, and we'll try to address any further questions that come into us via email. And thank you, everyone, for your participation today. Have a great day.